Oh my God. Why is my penniless ex-boyfriend here?
Clarissa gripped the microphone tighter. Her lips curled into a sneer.
Look at him, still that cheap suit. Still those cheap shoes, still the same useless black guy I dumped back in college.
200 guests turned to stare.
Hey, you pathetic wretch, I didn't invite you here. Are you trying to ruin my wedding?
Laughter erupted throughout the banquet hall. Byron Bennett didn't budge. He looked at her calmly and spoke loud enough for everyone at the table to hear.
Congratulations, Clarissa. You look beautiful.
My poor ex-boyfriend. Still as pathetic as ever.
Suddenly, her husband stopped her, took the microphone, and uttered a word that made her turn pale and faint. Let me take you back to that morning, 6 hours before everything fell apart. Byron Bennett stood in a hotel room at the Hampton Inn off Interstate 85, just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Not the Ritz, not the Four Seasons. A regular hotel with thin walls and a coffee maker that barely worked. He ironed his navy suit on the corner of the bed. Steam hissed off the fabric. The iron left crisp lines down each sleeve. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, then again, emails from board members, a Bloomberg alert about a pending acquisition, a text from his executive assistant that read, "Monday closing confirmed, all parties signed." He ignored every single one. Today wasn't about business. Today was personal. Byron hadn't seen Clarissa Davis in 8 years. They dated for 2 years at Howard University. She was sharp, ambitious, beautiful. He was a kid from Southeast D.C. with big dreams and an empty bank account. She left him junior year. Didn't even do it in person. She sent a text. "You're a nice guy, Byron, but nice doesn't pay rent. I need someone who can give me the life I deserve." That was the last thing she ever said to him. Until today. He clipped on a simple tie. Dark blue, no pattern. He looked at himself in the mirror. Tall, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven. No designer labels. No flashy watch. Nothing that screamed money. That was deliberate. He was here because the groom, Tyler Anderson, had personally invited him. Tyler was a senior VP at Ridgeline Freight, a mid-size logistics company based in Charlotte. What Tyler knew, and what Clarissa did not, was that Byron's firm, Pinnacle Capital Group, was acquiring Ridgeline in a deal worth $300 million. As of Monday morning, Byron would be Tyler's boss. But Byron didn't come to make a scene. He came because Tyler asked, and Byron respected Tyler. He grabbed his room key and headed for the door. Now let me tell you about this wedding venue. Because it matters. The Belmont Country Club sat on 40 acres of manicured land west of Charlotte. Magnolia trees lined the entrance. Valets in white gloves opened car doors. The guest list leaned wealthy, connected, and overwhelmingly white. Byron pulled up in a rented sedan. Not a limousine. Not the black Escalade his driver usually took him around in. A rental. He stepped out and adjusted his jacket. The Carolina sun hit the back of his neck. Humidity clung to everything. The smell of fresh-cut grass, mixed with expensive perfume, drifting from the entrance. He was one of maybe 5 black faces in a crowd of 200. His mother, Denise Bennett, stepped out of the passenger side. 63 years old, retired schoolteacher from D.C. She wore a lavender dress she'd picked out 3 weeks ago. Her silver earrings caught the light. She looked at the country club and said quietly, "Fancy place." Byron smiled. "You deserve fancy, Mom." She straightened his tie. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure." "That girl broke your heart, baby." "That was a long time ago." Denise studied his face. Then she nodded. "All right, but you don't run from your past. You walk right through it, head high." They walked in together. At the entrance, Greg Davis, Clarissa's father, stood greeting guests like a small-town mayor running for re-election. Big handshake, big smile, loud voice. When Byron and Denise approached, the smile stiffened. Greg looked Byron up and down, slowly, the way you look at something stuck to your shoe. And you are? They'd met before. Twice. Greg knew exactly who Byron was. Byron Bennett, friend of the groom. Greg didn't extend his hand. He just nodded toward the ballroom. Tables are inside. No welcome, no warmth, just a nod. Denise watched Greg walk away. She said nothing, but her jaw tightened. Inside the ballroom, a hostess guided them to their seats. Table 12. Byron counted the tables as they walked. Table 1 near the stage, Table 2 beside the dance floor, Tables 3 through 11 spread across the center. Table 12 was pressed against the far wall, right next to the swinging service door. A waiter nearly bumped into Byron as they sat down. The floral arrangement on their table was smaller than the others. Wilted even, like someone had grabbed the leftover one from the back of the van. Denise looked around. Then she looked at Byron. They put us by the kitchen. Byron unfolded his napkin. I know, Mom. She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. The ceremony started at 4 o'clock sharp. 200 guests sat in white chairs on the south lawn. Magnolia petals drifted in the warm breeze. A string quartet played something soft and classical, the kind of music that made rich people feel even richer. Byron and Denise sat in the second-to-last row, far left side, partially blocked by a stone column. Nobody had directed them there. They just knew. Clarissa appeared at the end of the aisle. White Vera Wang gown, cathedral-length veil. Bouquet of white roses so perfect they almost looked fake. She floated forward on Greg's arm like she owned every square inch of that lawn. And maybe she did. Tyler stood at the altar, clean-cut, nervous, smiling. He looked like a man who couldn't believe his luck. The officiant spoke. The rings were exchanged. Then came the vows. Tyler went first. His were simple, honest. He talked about partnership and growing old together. A few guests dabbed their eyes. Then Clarissa took the microphone. She started sweet. She thanked her parents. She thanked the bridal party. She called Tyler the answer to every prayer I ever whispered. Then her voice shifted. I spent my 20s learning what love isn't, she said. Her eyes drifted, just for a second, toward Byron's row. I kissed frogs. I wasted years on men who couldn't even buy me dinner, let alone build me a future. A few guests chuckled. But God is faithful. He removed the wrong ones so the right one could find me. She looked straight at Tyler, but her words were aimed at the second-to-last row. Byron's face didn't change. Denise's hand found his knee under the chair. The ceremony ended. Guests stood and applauded. Clarissa and Tyler walked back up the aisle, showered in petals. As they passed Byron's row, Clarissa glanced sideways. She didn't smile. She smirked, like a woman who wanted to make sure he saw exactly what he lost. Byron clapped politely. Denise didn't. Cocktail hour was held in the garden terrace. White lanterns hung from oak trees. A jazz trio played near the bar. Waiters in black vests glided through the crowd, carrying silver trays of champagne and shrimp cocktail. Byron stood near the edge of the terrace, quiet, holding a glass of water, watching the crowd do what crowds do, laugh too loud, drink too fast, compete over who knew the couple best. Denise had gone to the restroom. He was alone. That's when Clarissa found him. She came with her full bridal party. 4 women in matching sage green dresses, hair pinned up, heels clicking on the stone patio. They moved like a pack. Clarissa stopped right in front of Byron, close enough that he could smell the champagne on her breath. Oh, Byron. She tilted her head. I honestly didn't think you'd show up. That's so brave of you. He nodded. It was a beautiful ceremony, Clarissa. She turned to her bridesmaids. Ladies, this is Byron, my college ex. She paused. Let the word hang. Sweet guy, just, you know. She waved her hand vaguely. The gesture said everything her mouth didn't. One bridesmaid, tall, blonde, holding a champagne flute like a scepter, looked Byron up and down. He's cute, but he looks like he took the bus here. They all laughed. Clarissa leaned in slightly. So, what are you doing with yourself these days, Byron? Still figuring it out? I work in finance. Her eyebrows shot up, then she grinned. The kind of grin that's really a knife. Finance? Like at a bank branch? A teller window? More laughter. Louder this time. Rachel Moore, the maid of honor, had her phone out. She was filming, not hiding it, just holding it up like this was content. Byron didn't blink. Something like that. Clarissa patted his shoulder. The way you pat a dog you feel sorry for. Good for you, Byron. Honestly, good for you. She turned and walked away. Her bridesmaids followed. One of them looked back and mouthed the word, "Yikes," to another. Byron took a sip of water. His hand was steady. His face revealed nothing. But if you looked closely, very closely, you'd notice his thumb pressing hard into the side of the glass, hard enough to turn the knuckle white. He didn't get a break. 10 minutes later, Greg Davis appeared at the bar, bourbon in hand, tie loosened, face flushed red from alcohol and self-importance. He leaned on the bar next to Byron, too close, the kind of closeness that wasn't friendly. It was territorial. Byron, Greg swirled his glass. Gotta be honest with you, son. I was real surprised to see your name on that guest list. Tyler invited me. Greg snorted. Tyler's a nice kid. Probably felt sorry for you. He took a long sip. Can't blame him. You do look a little lost out here. Byron said nothing. Greg leaned closer. His breath smelled like oak and ego. Let me give you some free advice. Enjoy the open bar while it lasts. Have some cake. But don't stay too long. He looked around the terrace, then back at Byron. This isn't exactly your crowd. You understand what I'm saying? Byron understood perfectly. I appreciate the advice, Mr. Davis. Greg laughed. Mr. Davis? That's nice. At least you've got manners. He looked at Byron's suit, squinted, reached out and pinched the lapel between his fingers, like he was inspecting fabric at a discount store. That a JCPenney number? He laughed at his own joke, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. A woman at the next table glanced over and looked away quickly. Then he slapped Byron's shoulder. Not a friendly slap, a heavy one. The kind that says, I'm bigger than you in every way that matters. Take care of yourself, son. He walked away. Back to his people. Back to the world he controlled. Byron set his water glass down on the bar. The condensation left a ring on the dark wood. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he straightened his tie and walked back inside. Dinner was about to begin. Guests filtered into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm gold light across white linen tables. Each centerpiece was overflowing with roses and eucalyptus. The head table sat on a raised platform near the stage, draped in ivory silk. Byron returned to table 12. The situation had gotten worse. When he and Denise had first sat down, there were 6 other guests at their table. A married couple in their 50s, a younger woman with red hair, an older man who seemed to know no one. Now the married couple was gone. Their place cards were still there. Their chairs were empty. Byron had seen them during cocktail hour, laughing with friends at table 6. They'd simply moved. No explanation, no apology, just gone. The red-haired woman had moved too. She was now squeezed in at table 9, chatting like she'd been there all night. That left Byron, Denise, and the older man, who sat at the far end of the table staring at his bread plate like it owed him money. 6 empty chairs at a table for 8. Denise came back from the restroom and scanned the table. She counted the chairs. She counted the people. Where did everybody go? Byron pulled her chair out for her. Doesn't matter, Mom. It does matter. Not tonight. She sat down slowly. She placed her clutch on the table. Her hands were trembling, not from age, but from something deeper. They moved because of us, she said quietly. Byron didn't deny it. A waiter pushed through the service door behind them. The door swung open and hit the back of Byron's chair. Cold kitchen air rushed in, the smell of industrial soap and reheated dinner rolls. "Sorry, man," the waiter muttered without looking at him. It happened again 2 minutes later, and again after that. Every time that door swung open, it bumped Byron's chair. Every time he adjusted without a word. Every time Denise watched it happen, with eyes that grew darker and sadder. She leaned over to her son. "Baby, we can leave. Right now. Nobody would blame us." Byron covered her hand with his. "We're not leaving, Mom. Not yet." He looked toward the head table. Clarissa was laughing with her bridesmaids. Tyler was whispering something in her ear. The champagne was flowing. The room was glowing. Music swelled from the speakers. Everything was golden and warm and beautiful. And at table 12, a mother and her son sat alone, surrounded by empty chairs, cold kitchen air, and the quiet understanding that they were never meant to be here at all. Dinner was served: filet mignon with roasted asparagus and truffle mashed potatoes, warm bread, rolls in cloth napkins, red wine poured tableside by waiters who smiled and called every guest sir and ma'am. At least that's what most tables received. Table 12 got chicken, plain, dry, overcooked chicken breast with steamed broccoli and a scoop of instant mashed potatoes that still had lumps in it. No garnish, no bread basket, no tableside wine, just a sad plate on a wet tablecloth next to a wilted centerpiece that smelled faintly of mildew. Byron looked at his plate. Denise looked at hers. 2 tables over, a woman sliced into a thick, perfectly pink fillet and let out a long, satisfied sound. The smell of truffle and rosemary drifted over from every direction. A waiter appeared at table 10 to refill wine glasses. He walked right past table 12 without stopping. Byron ate without complaint. Denise folded her hands in her lap. She didn't touch hers. The older man at the far end of table 12 had already left. His chair sat empty. That made 7 empty chairs. Byron and Denise were the only 2 people left at a table built for 8. The MC, a loud man in a burgundy vest, with a voice built for car commercials, stepped onto the stage. He tapped the microphone twice. Feedback whined through the speakers and echoed off the marble walls. "Ladies and gentlemen, the bride would like to say a few words." Applause filled the ballroom. Chairs turned. Phones rose into the air like a small forest of glowing screens. Clarissa stood from the head table. She smoothed her gown with both hands. She picked up a champagne flute in her left hand and the microphone in her right. The chandelier light caught her diamond earrings and scattered tiny rainbows across the ivory tablecloth. She looked like a queen addressing her kingdom, and the kingdom was ready to listen. "First of all," she began, voice honey-sweet, "I want to thank every single person in this room for being here tonight. This is the happiest day of my entire life." Applause. "I want to thank my incredible parents. Daddy, you showed me what a real man looks like. You set the bar so high nobody could reach it." She raised her glass toward Greg. He stood up, adjusted his jacket, and took a theatrical bow. The room clapped louder. "And to my bridesmaids, my ride or dies, I love you girls more than wine, and y'all know that's saying a lot." Warm laughter, easy, comfortable. The room belonged to her. Then the tone shifted, like a song changing key in the middle of a verse. "Now, I want to get a little personal." She paused, took a slow sip of champagne, licked her bottom lip. "I spent most of my 20s making mistakes, big ones. I dated men who had loud mouths and empty pockets. Men who promised me the world over a plate of 10-cent ramen noodles in a cockroach apartment. A few guests chuckled nervously. Eyes around the room began drifting toward table 12. Clarissa kept going. Her voice climbed, louder, sharper, more deliberate. I remember sitting in a tiny apartment in college, roaches crawling in the sink, power getting cut off every other month, water so cold you could see your breath in the shower. Listening to this guy tell me he was going to be somebody, going to be rich one day, going to change the whole world. She shook her head slowly, and I believed him. Can you imagine? I actually sat on that stained futon and believed every single word. The laughter grew. Not warm anymore, pointed, aimed. Well, she smiled wide, teeth gleaming. I looked across this room tonight, and I saw that exact same guy. Same cheap suit, same empty promises, same sad little dreams. She paused. 3 full seconds of silence. The air conditioning hummed. A fork clinked somewhere. Nobody breathed. And you know what I realized? Some people never change. Some people are still eating ramen. The room exploded. 200 people laughing at once. The sound bounced off the crystal chandeliers. It echoed off the marble floor. It rolled across every table, like thunder that wouldn't stop. Every single eye turned to table 12. Byron sat perfectly still, fork down, hands flat on the tablecloth, face carved from stone. Denise stared straight ahead. Her bottom lip trembled. A single tear slid down her cheek and dropped onto her lavender dress. Then another. Then another. Tiny dark circles blooming across the fabric like bruises. Clarissa was not done. She raised her champagne glass high above her head. The crystal caught every light in the room. She aimed it directly at Byron's table, like a weapon dressed in glass. To Byron, my sweet, broke, hopeless, pathetic ex-boyfriend. Her voice was theatrical now, performing for 200 guests, hanging on every word. Thank you for teaching me exactly what I didn't want in a man. Thank you for being the rock bottom that made me reach for the stars. She tilted the glass toward him. A toast, a salute, a public execution, wrapped in a wedding speech. To settling down, and never, ever settling again. The ballroom erupted. Clapping, cheering, whistling. Someone at table 4 slammed their palm on the table so hard the silverware jumped. Rachel Moore stood 3 feet from the head table, phone locked on Byron's face, recording every frame. Byron did not move. He absorbed every word the way a wall absorbs rain. But behind his eyes, something deep and heavy was gathering. Denise was shaking now. She reached for a napkin, but her hand trembled so badly she knocked over her water glass. Ice water spilled across the table, soaking the wilted flowers, dripping off the edge onto the marble floor. Nobody came over. Nobody handed her a napkin. Nobody asked if she was okay. Then Greg stood up, drunk, face red as a fire hydrant, tie yanked completely loose, hanging crooked off his neck. Sweat glistened on his forehead. He cupped both hands around his mouth like a megaphone and shouted across the ballroom, "Hey, Byron." The laughter dimmed, just enough to let his voice cut through. "Don't sweat it, son. There's a Greyhound station 2 miles east. You can still catch the 9 o'clock bus back to whatever little hole you crawled out of." Laughter, hard, loud, not from everyone, but enough that it felt like the whole room agreed. A man at table 5 raised his bourbon glass. "Somebody call this man an Uber." More laughter. A woman's voice near the bar. "Make sure it's the economy option." Another voice further back. "Pool ride." It was spreading. Joke after joke after joke. Each one louder than the last. Each one crueler. Each one aimed directly at the man sitting alone with his crying mother at a table nobody wanted. The ballroom had become an arena, and Byron Bennett was the show. Tyler sat at the head table with his jaw locked tight. He leaned into Clarissa and whispered something sharp. She didn't even look at him. She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. She was riding the high, the applause, the power of making an entire room laugh at someone she once said she loved. Byron scanned the ballroom one last time. Some faces were laughing wide. Some were recording on phones, tilting screens for better angles. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman near table 8 had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide, but she said nothing. None of them did. Not one person in 200 stood up. Not one person said stop. He looked at his mother. Denise had her eyes closed. Her lips were moving without sound. She was praying. Right there at table 12, next to the kitchen door, in a room full of people laughing at her only son, this 63-year-old retired school teacher from Southeast D.C. was praying. Something shifted behind Byron's eyes. Not anger, something colder, quieter. The kind of shift that happens when a man who has been patient his entire life arrives at the exact place where patience ends and a decision begins. He reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, under the table where nobody could see, he pulled out his phone, opened a text thread, typed 4 words, hit send. The narrator doesn't tell you what those 4 words said. Not yet. He slid the phone back. He picked up a clean napkin and gently, so gently, pressed it against his mother's cheek. He caught each tear the way you catch something precious, something fragile, something the world doesn't deserve to break. "It's almost over, Mom," he whispered. She opened her eyes, looked at him. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He just straightened his tie. The same navy tie he'd ironed that morning at the Hampton Inn with thin walls and a coffee maker that barely worked. And he waited. Up on the stage, Clarissa was still glowing, still laughing, still holding the microphone like she'd just delivered the greatest performance of her life. She had no idea what was coming next. The applause for Clarissa's toast was still echoing when Tyler Anderson pushed his chair back. The legs scraped against the marble floor. The sound cut through the laughter like a blade. He stood up slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't look at his bride. He reached across the head table and picked up the microphone. His hand was steady, but his jaw was tight. A vein pulsed on the side of his neck. The MC stepped forward. "Tyler, did you want to—" "I've got it." The room quieted. In patches. Tables near the front went silent first, then the middle, then the back. Within 10 seconds, 200 people were staring at the groom. Clarissa touched his arm. "Babe, what are you doing?" He didn't answer her. "I had an announcement planned for tonight," Tyler said into the microphone. His voice was calm but heavy. "I was going to save it for after the cake. But after what just happened in this room, I think now is a better time." He turned, slowly, deliberately, toward table 12. "Most of you know I work at Ridgeline Freight. 11 years. It's my career. It's my life." He swallowed hard. "What most of you don't know is that for the past 14 months, Ridgeline has been in acquisition talks. A deal worth $300 million. A deal that saves 2,000 jobs across 6 states. A deal that closes Monday morning." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests leaned forward. Forks froze midair. "I want to introduce the man who made this deal possible. The founder and CEO of Pinnacle Capital Group, one of the largest private equity firms on the East Coast." He raised his hand and pointed directly at table 12, at the man sitting next to the kitchen door with his mother. "Byron Bennett, my boss, as of Monday morning." The ballroom didn't gasp. It inhaled. 200 people sucked in air at the same moment, and the room held it like a lung that forgot how to exhale. Then the silence cracked open, whispers first, then full voices overlapping. "Wait, what? Pinnacle Capital? That's a $2 billion firm. Are you serious? Oh my God!" James Caldwell, Ridgeline's current CEO, seated at table 3, stood up. He buttoned his jacket and spoke clearly. Tyler's right. Byron's firm is acquiring us. That man is about to become the most important person in this building. The murmurs became a roar. Clarissa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It bounced once on the tablecloth and rolled off the edge, shattering on the marble floor. In that moment, the small sound hit like a gunshot. Her face drained of color. Every ounce of blush, every layer of bronzer, every carefully applied shade of confidence, gone. What was left was paper white, ghost white. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Then a whisper. What? She looked at Tyler. He didn't look back. She looked at her bridesmaids. They looked at the floor. She looked at her father. Greg Davis sat frozen in his chair, his bourbon glass tilted at an angle, amber liquid pooling slowly across the white tablecloth. His face had gone from red to gray in 5 seconds. The man who told Byron, "This isn't your crowd, just learn the crowd belonged to Byron all along." Because it did. Clarissa's knees buckled. Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed sideways, veil crumpling, train folding underneath her, one heel catching the edge of the chair. She fainted right there at the head table, champagne pooling on one side, broken glass on the other, 200 phones pointing at her from every angle. Rachel Moore was still recording. She hadn't stopped once. Bridesmaids rushed forward. Someone shouted for water. Someone called for a doctor. The MC fumbled with the microphone stand. The jazz band stopped mid-note, instruments hanging in the air. Celebration had become chaos in under 60 seconds. And at table 12, Byron Bennett stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a fist or point a finger. He simply stood, tall, broad-shouldered, calm as a man who had sat across boardrooms on 3 continents for the last decade. He buttoned his jacket. The navy jacket Greg Davis had called J.C. Penney. What Greg didn't know, and what the narrator now reveals, is that it was custom Tom Ford. Hand-stitched in Manhattan. Byron just never wore labels on the outside. He never needed to. He looked across the ballroom at Tyler and nodded once, a nod between 2 men who understood each other. "Tyler," he said. His voice was quiet, but it reached every corner of that silent room. "I came tonight as your friend. That hasn't changed." Tyler nodded back. His eyes were wet. Byron turned to the room. 200 faces stared at him. Some were pale, some were red, some couldn't meet his eyes. The woman at table 8, who had covered her mouth earlier, was crying now. "I don't need anyone in this room to feel sorry for me," he said. "I never did." He reached down and took his mother's hand. Denise stood up beside him. She straightened her lavender dress. She lifted her chin. She held her son's arm the way a queen holds the arm of a king. They walked toward the exit together. Denise's heels clicked on the marble. Every step echoed. Nobody spoke. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. At the door, Byron stopped. He turned back one last time. He looked at the ballroom, the chandeliers, the roses, the overturned champagne, the woman on the floor, the 200 people frozen in their guilt. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," he said. Then he walked out. Clarissa came to on the floor of the ballroom. Her veil was twisted around her neck. Her mascara had streaked down both cheeks in dark, jagged lines. One of her diamond earrings was missing. It had bounced under the head table when she fell. A bridesmaid was fanning her face with a cloth napkin. Another was holding a glass of water that shook in her hand. The first thing Clarissa saw when she opened her eyes was 200 faces staring down at her. Not laughing anymore, not cheering, just staring. The way people stare at a car wreck on the highway. Horrified, but unable to look away. She grabbed Tyler's arm and pulled herself up. Her legs were unsteady. Her voice was raw. Tell me that wasn't real. Tyler looked at her. The warmth that had been in his eyes during the ceremony was gone. What replaced it was something flat and cold. It's real, Clarissa. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? Tyler's jaw tightened. I did. I told you 3 times not to do that toast. I told you last week when you were rehearsing it in the mirror. I told you this morning. I told you 10 minutes before you stood up. You didn't listen. You never listen. Clarissa's mouth opened. Nothing came out. That man, Tyler said, his voice low and shaking, holds my entire career in his hands. $300 million, 2,000 jobs, my future, our future, and you just stood up there and called him pathetic. Their first fight as a married couple happened right there, in front of the bridal party, in front of the caterers, in front of Rachel Moore's phone, which was still recording. Clarissa started crying, not the graceful kind, the ugly kind, the kind where your whole face crumbles and snot runs and your chest heaves in broken, gasping sobs. Nobody comforted her, not even her bridesmaids. They just stood there, clutching their champagne flutes, looking at each other like they'd all been caught in a fire they didn't know how to escape. Outside, the situation was worse. Greg Davis had sobered up fast. Fear does that. He loosened his collar and half ran through the country club lobby, dress shoes slapping against the tile floor. He burst through the front doors into the parking lot just as a black Escalade pulled up to the valet stand. Byron and Denise were walking toward it. A private driver held the rear door open. "Byron!" Greg shouted. He was sweating through his shirt. His voice cracked. "Byron, wait! Listen to me." Byron kept walking. "It was a joke, son. You know how weddings are. People drink too much. They say stupid things. Nobody meant anything by it." Byron reached the Escalade. He helped his mother into the back seat. Gently. The way he did everything, Greg caught up. He was breathing hard. He put his hand on the car door. "Let's talk about this. Man to man. I'm sure we can..." Byron looked at him. Just looked. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. The look said everything 1,000 words couldn't. It said, "You had your chance to be a man tonight. You used it to tell me to catch a bus." Byron got in the car. The door closed. The window went up. The Escalade's taillights glowed red as it pulled away. Greg Davis stood alone in that parking lot, hands at his sides, watching $300 million disappear down a dark road. Back inside, Rachel Moore did what Rachel Moore always did. She posted the content. The full clip, Clarissa's toast, Tyler's reveal, the faint, the broken glass, hit TikTok at 11:47 that night. By midnight, it had 400,000 views. By 2 a.m., it crossed 2 million. By sunrise, it was everywhere. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Table 12. Hashtag Byron Bennett. Hashtag Bride Failed the Test. Hashtag My Poor Ex. Comment sections turned into courtrooms. Thousands of strangers debated, judged, and condemned a woman they had never met. Every major outlet picked it up. Local news in Charlotte ran it first, then national, then international. Screenshots of Clarissa's face, mid-toast, mid-faint, were turned into memes that spread faster than the original video. Byron didn't comment. Not a single word. His silence made the story bigger. The internet loves a man who lets his silence speak. Monday morning arrived. The acquisition was supposed to close. Instead, Pinnacle Capital Group's legal team sent Ridgeline Freight a formal memo. 3 sentences. The deal was under review, pending an internal assessment, not canceled, not confirmed, just frozen. Tyler was called into James Caldwell's office at 8:15 a.m. The door closed behind him. The mood inside was funereal. The fallout didn't come all at once. It came in waves. each one bigger than the last. The first wave was corporate. Pinnacle Capital Group's board of directors released a public statement 72 hours after the wedding. 4 paragraphs, polite, professional, devastating. The statement said, Pinnacle was committed to conducting business in environments free of racial hostility and discrimination. It said the firm had launched an internal review of its pending acquisition of Ridgeline Freight. It said the review would take 90 days. 90 days. In business, that's not a pause. That's a death sentence in slow motion. Ridgeline stock dropped 11% the day the statement went public. By the end of the week, it had fallen 18%. Investors called emergency meetings. Board members drafted contingency plans. The entire company, 2,000 employees across 6 states, held its breath and waited for a verdict that might never come. Tyler Anderson was quietly reassigned, not fired. That would have been too clean. Instead, he was moved from senior VP to a regional logistics role in a satellite office 40 minutes outside Charlotte. Same salary, half the responsibility, 0 respect. His colleagues avoided him in the hallway. His name was removed from the company's leadership page. In meetings, people looked through him like he was made of glass. The man who had been on track to become Ridgeline's next CEO was now invisible inside his own company. James Caldwell held a press conference. He stood behind a podium with the Ridgeline logo and spoke for 6 minutes. He called the events at the wedding deeply inappropriate and in no way reflective of our company's values. He distanced Ridgeline from the Davis family. He used the phrase "zero tolerance" 3 times. When a reporter asked if Tyler would be terminated, Caldwell paused for 4 seconds before saying, "Personnel matters are handled internally." That pause told the world everything it needed to know. The second wave was personal, and it hit Clarissa hardest. Her employer, a boutique PR firm in Charlotte called Sterling and Associates, terminated her contract the Tuesday after the video went viral. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. A public relations professional who had destroyed her own public image in under 3 minutes. Sterling released a 1-sentence statement. "We wish Clarissa well in her future endeavors." Corporate language for, "Don't call us. Don't ever mention you worked here." Clarissa tried to fight back. She recorded a tearful apology video in her living room. Soft lighting. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She sat on a cream-colored couch and spoke directly into the camera. She said she was sorry. She said she'd been drinking. She said it was a joke that went too far. She said she wasn't a racist. She said she hoped Byron could forgive her. The video lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds. The internet destroyed it in 4 minutes and 23. The top comment, with 200,000 likes, read, "You didn't cry when you were laughing at him." Another, "She's not sorry she did it. She's sorry everyone saw." Another, "This isn't an apology. This is damage control." Another, simpler than all the rest, "Ma'am, you called him useless in front of his mother." The video was ratioed into oblivion. News outlets played clips of it side by side with clips from the wedding. The contrast was brutal. The confident, sneering bride on the left, the tearful, crumbling woman on the right. Same face, same mouth, different audience. Greg Davis didn't escape either. Within 2 weeks, 3 of his commercial real estate clients quietly severed ties. No dramatic announcements, just emails. "We've decided to go in a different direction. We appreciate your years of service. Best of luck." 2 commercial deals worth a combined $800,000 collapsed. Buyers pulled out. Partners stopped returning calls. A development project in uptown Charlotte that Greg had spent 2 years assembling fell apart in a single afternoon when the lead investor read the article. The Charlotte Observer ran a profile with a headline that followed Greg like a shadow. Charlotte developer's daughter sparks national outrage at country club wedding. The article included quotes from unnamed associates who called Greg a liability and someone you don't want your brand near. Greg stopped attending public events, stopped going to the country club, stopped answering calls from numbers he didn't recognize. The man who had greeted guests like a king at his daughter's wedding now sat alone in his office, watching his empire shrink, one phone call at a time. The third wave belonged to Byron. He didn't seek it. He didn't chase it. It found him anyway. Business magazines ran profiles. Forbes called him the CEO who walked out with dignity. Inc. magazine featured him in a piece about Black founders reshaping private equity. His photo, the one Rachel Moore accidentally captured as he walked out of the ballroom, head high, mother on his arm, was shared over 4 million times. Denise became her own phenomenon. The clip of her walking out, lavender dress, silver earrings, chin lifted, not a single tear left on her face, went viral on its own. The hashtag Mama Bennett trended for 3 straight days. Someone printed t-shirts with her silhouette and the words, "Hold your head high, baby." The proceeds went to a literacy charity in Southeast D.C. Byron finally gave one interview, just one, a calm, 10-minute sit-down with a journalist he respected. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't trash Clarissa. He didn't play the victim. He said, "I didn't build Pinnacle Capital to prove anything to anyone who left me. I built it because I believed in what I could create." He said, "My mother raised me to stay when it's hard and leave when it's disrespectful." That night, it was time to leave. When the journalist asked if he was angry, Byron paused. Then he said, "I was never angry. I was disappointed, not in her, in the room." That quote was printed on coffee mugs within 48 hours. After 90 days, the review ended. Pinnacle completed the acquisition of Ridgeline Freight, but on new terms. A portion of annual profits would be directed into a diversity and inclusion initiative fund. Byron established it personally. It would sponsor scholarships, mentorship programs, and bias training across every Ridgeline office in the country. Tyler was offered a role under the new structure, not the role he had before, a smaller one. He accepted without negotiation. He showed up on his first day, sat at his new desk, and did his work. Quietly, humbly. Clarissa and Tyler's marriage, barely 6 weeks old, was under visible strain. The narrator doesn't confirm a divorce, but the foundation that was supposed to hold them together had cracked on the very first night, and some cracks don't heal. They just grow quieter until there's nothing left to break. So where are they now? Byron Bennett's firm, Pinnacle Capital Group, hit $3 billion in managed assets within a year of the Ridgeline acquisition. He was featured on the cover of Black Enterprise. He spoke at Howard University's commencement ceremony. He didn't mention the wedding. He didn't need to. What he did do was establish the Denise Bennett Scholarship Fund, full-ride scholarships for first-generation college students from Southeast D.C. The application doesn't ask about GPA or test scores. It asks one question: what obstacle did you overcome that nobody saw? The first class of recipients included 14 students. Denise handed each one their acceptance letter personally. She wore the same lavender dress, the same silver earrings. She told every single one of them the same thing: hold your head high, baby, no matter what room you walk into. She became an informal speaker at community centers and churches across the D.C. area. Not paid, not sponsored, just a retired school teacher with a story people needed to hear. Tyler Anderson kept his head down. He worked his new role at Ridgeline without complaint. 6 months after the acquisition, he sent Byron a handwritten letter. 2 pages. No excuses. No justifications. Just an honest, raw apology for what happened in that ballroom and for not speaking up sooner. Byron read it twice. Then he framed it. Not out of vindication, not as a trophy. He framed it as a reminder that people are capable of change if they choose it. Clarissa left Charlotte. She moved to a smaller city in Virginia. She deleted her social media accounts. She changed her hair. She tried to rebuild a career in marketing under her maiden name. But the internet has a long memory. Screenshots don't expire. Search results don't forget. The narrator doesn't know if she ever truly changed. Some people do. Some people just learn to hide better. That part of the story isn't finished yet. Greg Davis sold 2 properties at a loss. He retired early. He stopped attending the country club. He stopped hosting parties. The man who once shook every hand in the room now avoided rooms altogether. The last anyone heard, he was spending his days on a lake house 2 hours north of Charlotte, alone, quiet, watching the water and wondering how one toast at one wedding on one Saturday night unwound 30 years of reputation in 30 seconds. And that's the part I want you to sit with. Because the real villain of this story wasn't just Clarissa. It wasn't just Greg. It was the 200 people who sat in that ballroom and laughed along. The ones who recorded on their phones instead of speaking up. The ones who saw a mother crying at a table by the kitchen and decided it wasn't their problem. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is a choice. And when you choose silence in the face of cruelty, you're not staying out of it. You're siding with the person holding the microphone. Byron didn't win because he was rich. He won because he knew exactly who he was before he walked into that room. The money didn't give him dignity. His mother did. His character did. The years of building something real when nobody was watching. That's what gave him the power to sit at table 12, endure every insult, and walk out with his head held high. Dignity is not something anyone can take from you. Not with words, not with laughter, not with a toast in front of 200 people. It's yours. It was always yours. So here's my question for you. If you were at that wedding, sitting at table 6 or table 9 or anywhere in that ballroom, would you have laughed along? Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have been the one person in 200 to stand up and say, "That's enough"? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because we're not done telling these stories. Not even close.
Here's what I took from this. One person said something cruel, but 200 people laughed. And that's the part that shook you up tonight. Not the one person with the microphone, the 200 who thought it was entertainment. Because the cruelty doesn't survive alone. It needs an audience. It needs the people who clap, people who record, people who look away, people who think, that's not my problem. Every single person who laughs alone, who stays quiet, who watches someone get torn apart and does nothing. You are not innocent. You are part of it. So next time you are in that room, and there will be a next time, ask yourself, am I laughing because it's funny, or am I laughing because anyone else is? Because those are two very different things, and only one of them lets you sleep at night. Be the one person who doesn't laugh. Be the one who say, that's enough. That's all it takes. One voice, one person, and the whole room changes. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, dignity isn't something anyone can take from you. Not with words, not with laughter, not with a room full of people. It's yours. It was always yours.